This is the Ernie Stadbeck Show with your host, Ernie Stadbeck. To get in touch with Ernie, write to Ernie Stadbeck, 378 South Van Buren Avenue, Barberton, Ohio, 44203-4014. By phone at 330-644-7724 or online at erniestad@aol.com. Now, here's Ernie with today's program.
Welcome to our show today, and we're at Green High School in the video department, and I call it the Lyons Den because our guest here is Chuck Lyons, who kind of heads this whole thing up. And Chuck, you know, we have seen for the last 19 months this political, the rallies from the front end. Right. We've never seen how it goes on the back end, how it's put together. And you're one guy who had a first-hand account of it. So can you tell us right from the beginning on this last rally with McCain and Governor Palin? And can you give us a rundown on that?
Well, Ernie, right off the bat, thanks for letting me be on your show today. And I'm one of many, many, many people that were involved in the process. And if I just had to sum it up in one word, I would just say overwhelming. That's what it was like. It was a very neat experience. I feel very privileged to be at Green High School, to be a part of this. And it was truly an educational experience for the students and for the teachers, staff, everybody that was involved. But the way it started, it was an absolute whirlwind of events that took place. I guess that the superintendent received a phone call from the Republican Party, I think on Saturday morning, from what I understand, and they said, we're considering, Green High School in the stadium as a place we would like to come to hold a rally. Well, things started to get going at that particular time, and I know that the superintendent, the principals of our school, the assistant principals, they were involved, and they had meetings all day Saturday, spent numerous hours here, and then Sunday they had meetings with people from the Republican Party, also the campaign party, all the Secret Service, Sheriff's Department. So there were hours and hours and hours spent Saturday and Sunday before anybody knew about it. I received a phone call from the principal on Sunday afternoon telling me what's going to be taking place and some things he was interested in doing. And then all the teachers got notified Sunday evening that this was taking place. We're going to have a special meeting Monday morning at 6:45 in the morning to go over details before the school day. And everything was off and running. And that happened on Saturday and Sunday prior to the rally.
It sounds like a military operation.
It really was an operation, a well-orchestrated, operation. And the one thing, I can't emphasize enough is the superintendent said that he would only do this if it was an educational experience for the students and the staff, and he wanted everybody to be involved in this process so they could see what's going on. And he says it has nothing to do with political parties, and he says, I'm not interested, it's about Republicans, about Democrats. He said, I want the experience. And it just so happened the Republican Party called here. He said if the Democratic Party called, or if they still want to come, be more than happy, to do that. So making it an educational experience and getting students and staff involved is what made the difference, and it really was a great experience for everyone.
Well, who actually pulled the whole thing? You had to have one guy in charge. Was it the superintendent, really, shepherding this whole thing and pulled it together?
Well, they have a front team for the campaign committee. There's there's several different teams that go out, and there was 3 or 4 people that were involved in doing the initial meeting here at the school, and they are on the staff of the Republican campaign committee, and they were the ones that pulled it together. Of course, they met with the principal, then they called in, the Secret Service, and they said, we need to talk to the Sheriff's Department, so they contact them, and it's actually their front team that puts all of this together. And then also contacting the news media, contacting NBC, which was a huge part of this that we could talk about. But their front team kind of puts it together, and between that team and the superintendent and our principal, they made things happen, and it happened quick. When you think about coming in on Saturday, and then on Wednesday, there's 10 to 15,000 people, at our stadium, and this taking place, that's unbelievable.
Those guys should take over some military operations.
Absolutely.
Maybe you can contract out,
How about, well,
the soldiers of fortune from Green High School.
Right. Might be able to do that, but I was really excited about it and to watch what was taking place. I know when we arrived at school Monday, all of a sudden you started seeing people in the school and things started happening, and then pretty soon we see these big tall guys in suits, with their earpiece, and they're talking into their sleeve, and the Secret Service, and they're checking things out. And one of the things that from our end, our other teacher, Mark Warble, and myself, we wanted to have the students involved in this, so we had students from our classes prepare to film events taking place. Because of this, we had to get their names, addresses, social security numbers. We had to get all this information because that had to be turned into the office because they had to get clearance and a background check from the Secret Service.
It was done that quick, background checks on even the kids that were involved?
Yes.
In your department that were filming?
Yes, we were told.
That's how fast they worked?
Well, we were told we had to have this information to them by this time on this date, and they had to do background checks on everybody before they were going to be allowed to be at the rally and basically involved in the press. So that was one aspect. The day of the rally, we had to put our camera equipment together. We probably had about 10 cases with equipment and microphones and tripods and still cameras, everything imaginable. We had to deliver that down to the stadium so they could take a look at it. We had to drop it off, we had to leave it, and then Secret Service would go over open cases, look at everything.
You mean all your equipment here that you're going to use?
A lot of the equipment, yeah. We had a lot of equipment down there, but I guess if it's going to be secure, it's probably going to be secure down there with all the FBI and Secret Service.
Sure. Was this part of the deal that you'd be able to film also or video also?
Correct. That's that's part of the educational experience, and the students had a chance to go down, and we didn't think that we were going to get a chance to, to do an interview with Mr. McCain and Governor Palin, but we wanted to look at getting interviews from the people that were attending the rally, talking to some of the press, because we had press from all over the world, and get some interviews from them, and to get the kids involved in the process of what it's like to be part of the press corps. And they found out what it was like, and
a lot of work,
and how they had to elbow themselves into room to get the shot.
So your part of it was doing the video for the school and for the kids. You were the big man on doing that then, right?
Well, there were, like I said, Mark Warble and myself were both down there. Basically, we're teachers. We're teachers, and we were down there with the students, and gave them some ideas of things to do, and we were just down there to oversee it. We didn't have to work nearly as hard as the students did that day. We're kind of watching them, and they're going around getting interviews. Now we have all this footage, and now so we're going to try to put some of this footage together in some different little feature stories and put that together.
May I ask another question? Did the kids get credit for all that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
We wanted to settle that right away,
Well, one of the things about this is the superintendent and principal, they said, we do not want to interrupt the educational process. There was school on Monday, there was school on Tuesday, there was school on Wednesday. Now, it's a little crazy in the hallways because of all the, the Secret Service and different people that were involved here, but classes went on as usual. People were teaching classes, and this was, actually the rally took place after school. So the kids, we had a lot of kids walk down from the school to the rally. We actually had about 400 kids in the school some way involved in the process.
That was an educational deal.
It was an
then.
education.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, we had kids involved at the end of filming, but there were kids in the journalism department, from the newspaper staff, from the yearbook staff, and different groups throughout the school. They had a chance to shadow the different people in the group. They had a chance to, let's say, work with the front team and stay right with them while they're on the phone, while they're running to the store to pick this up, to pick that up, to do whatever. And so the kids got a chance to be with them all day long. Now those students, they were not in the classroom that day, but they're with some of these people. And I mean, what an education. Unbelievable.
Well, now, that was part of the deal. It had to be educational, right?
Correct.
How did the outsiders take to that, having the kids, for lack of a better word, underfoot?
They were fantastic. They told us that they, really enjoyed it. They had fun working with the students. In fact, one of the students even got a chance to shadow the Secret Service. They asked him, to go home. Can he get a sports coat? Got a sports coat. They wired him up with the earpiece, the microphone in the sleeve.
Experience of a lifetime for that kid.
And he heard on the earpiece all the traffic that was going on with the Secret Service. He was at the airport in that to meet Senator and Governor Palin, to meet both of them, and that he was in the bus with them. He was in the car with them. So he was treated just like one of the people in the Secret Service.
How did you arrange that?
That was part of the shadowing.
Mm-hmm. They picked this particular kid, big guy?
No.
No?
No.
Not a football player?
No.
Okay.
No, one of the students in our school that is interested in not necessarily Secret Service, but the journalism, and we knew students that would be interested in getting the most out of this experience. And actually, we just had him on the superintendent's talk show a couple days ago, and he sat here and said, "Oh my goodness, the experience of a lifetime." He said, "I will never forget that." Well, I mean,
wonderful.
That's why you do it. That's why you do it.
Certainly. That was good. Has this been done before at any other schools around the country?
I know that they're actually, I think, going up to Menor High School. I think this week there's going to be a rally up there, but I do not know as far as having the students involved in the process. So, I want to commend our superintendent, Dr. Wade Lucas, that he made that a priority. He said, we will not just turn everything over to you, and that we want to make this an educational process. And the nice part that he has been communicating to the public is that it cost Green High School, the Green local school system, it cost us no dollars at all. And in fact, they basically rented out facilities of the school and the stadium to the Republican committee. Mm-hmm. So it didn't cost the taxpayers any money, and it provided a great educational opportunity.
Chuck, we'll be back in just a moment after this message. Okay, we're back with Chuck Lyons again in the Lyons Den. Serving the Akron area with printing, copying, and also doing newsletters, booklets, books. And we're not just about airplanes and airplane manuals, although we're the largest in the world in supplying manuals, reproducing manuals for the military, civilian, and airline industries. So we can do your books, we can do your newsletters, and we're experienced. We have people that have been with us for 20 years. Our people are what make ESCO go. So give us a call. We're at 330-644-7724, and our website is ESCO Aircraft. Remember, ESCO is not about airplanes, it's about printing quality work, and there's a reason why we've been in business since 1954. And thank you once again for contacting. One thing, how about NBC? That was your big interest, wasn't it? Watching and having your students work with. How were they to work with?
Gosh, that was my treat. That was my treat. You know, it was exciting to have McCain and Palin here, but my treat was working with NBC, getting a chance to basically watch and observe and to talk to the people on the crew. One of the things that took place was NBC came rolling in on Monday, bringing their truck and their crew in, and we didn't know it at the time, but what was happening, Brian Williams, the anchor, and that for the 6:30 news broadcast, he was going to be coming to Green. And we knew at that time that he was going to be doing the evening news at 6:30 live from Green High School.
I saw that.
Unbelievable. Well, then what we didn't know that I know that Mark Warble and myself found out, and a few people, is they were going to be doing an interview with McCain and Palin on the stage in our theater. And they kind of kept that under wraps, and not too many people knew about that. And actually, the NBC crew came in and they spent a day and a half setting up all their camera equipment, all their high definition cameras, and the lights, and to light the theater up, and to get this all set up so Brian Williams could conduct this interview, which actually took place about an hour before the rally. And that everybody, school was out at the end of the day at 2:30, and everybody went down to the rally, and at that time Secret Service came in, did a sweep of the building, secured the building, and that's when Senator McCain and Governor Palin came in, and they sat down with Brian Williams on our stage to do an interview. And that was the first time that Mr. Williams had a chance to interview Governor Palin. He hasn't had a chance to interview her at all, and now he had a chance to be with both of them. So he said that that was a real treat for him. He was excited about it.
I mean, in this whole campaign, he's never been able to get to her?
No, so far, just probably because of scheduling and everything else. So his first interview with her was here at Green High School.
Now, how did the NBC crew help you, though, for your part?
For me, as a teacher, just by... Well, first of all, getting a chance to meet their head photographer. The head photographer for NBC was here, and he was just a wealth of information. He actually came into the studio, visited right where we're at right now, and we talked about equipment and some techie things like photographers like to do. But then the stories he told me. He has been there. He's done it all. He's been to 110 countries for the last 30 years, and he's been involved in just about everything that you can think of, and talking about what that's like. I mean, for me, that's history. And, and talking about what he did and his job to report the news and to be able to bring this back to people, and especially today how things have changed. Once again, I didn't even realize what they were doing right now. In the old days, what they would do is they would, well, not even that in the old days, even just a few years ago, they would bring a semi, park it outside. Inside there would probably be 12 people that would be sitting there, and the cameras would be set up in the school. They'd run the cables out to the truck. They do what we call switching. They switch between cameras 1, 2, and 3, like you're seeing on this broadcast, and they do the audio, and there's, like I said, a lot of people involved. This time, they had a truck that was half the size. They had the cameras on stage, fiber optic cables running back to the truck, and all they did was provide a good signal that was sent to via satellite to New York City, and that the NBC crew was sitting there in their control room. They were doing all the switching of cameras, all the audio work, everything in New York City here at Green High School.
You're talking about the old days. Now, the old days, where they used to film and they had the film and they had to get it to New York.
Right.
Well, that time I was in the flying business, and we would fly these to New York.
Yeah.
And be ready, and they'd come racing in and throw the film on the airplane, and away we'd go.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, what was anything unusual or funny that happened that will stick with you outside of everything else?
Okay. The big treat, the day's almost over on Wednesday. And at 6:30, we were still around. Mark and I were hanging around outside with some students because Brian Williams was doing his nightly news broadcast live. He was right outside of the building in a tent. And they had the school in the background. And so we wanted to see that. So we did some filming there, and I took photographs. After that, we stayed around, and one of the students from our school had a chance to interview Mr. Williams. So about 7:30 to 8 o'clock that night, we had a chance, there were like 4 or 5 of us, to be in the library to sit down with Brian Williams and listen to him talk.
Did you video that?
No, with that part we weren't allowed to, and that you start getting into some issues with NBC and so forth. I took some pictures of what was going on, but to be able to sit there and listen to him.
What kind of a guy is he? Did he do all the talking, or did he listen?
He was asked questions by our student, and so he did most of the talking, answering questions, and I always enjoyed him as a journalist, but boy, is he a class act.
Really?
Just unbelievable. A very nice gentleman, very humble. I remember him saying specifically that he just hated that it said at the bottom, where it said the evening news with Brian Williams. He goes, why my name? He says, you see what it takes. You see all the people here that it takes to make the show work, plus the hundreds of people back in New York, to put this together. And he said, that's just not right. He said, I'm just one part of, of this production. And so he's a real team player.
Well, he came from a different background. A little trivia on Brian Williams. He was a fireman.
Oh, no.
Years ago, before he got into journalism and TV. I think maybe while he's going to college. But anyway, did you talk to Senator McCain and Governor Palin?
No, did not have the opportunity to do that. They were pretty well isolated, coming in. They were on a schedule, because I know they left here. They were right back to Akron Canton Airport, and they were in Cincinnati for a rally at 6:30 that night.
Grueling schedule, huh?
Yeah, that's for sure. But for me, my treat was Brian Williams and the head photographer for NBC. Being in journalism and being in broadcasting just on a local level, to get to meet people of that caliber, it was great. NBC just loved being here at Green. They liked the facility. They said that everybody was really nice to them, bent over backwards to help them make everything successful. And it was great working with them.
What was the most interesting thing this head photographer told you?
Wow, boy.
I caught you too quick on that.
No, I'm just trying to. He told me so many neat things.
Really?
He was one block away when Tower 1 went down at 9/11. He was filming, and he had to duck back into doorways to keep objects from hitting him, and that's how close he was. And then he'd be out filming, and
how did he happen to be there, did he say?
He just happened to be in New York that day, and they were doing some filming, and he just happened to be right down by...
Always has his camera ready. A real photographer.
And he said it gets to you when some of those things falling down around you were bodies from people jumping. And he said, didn't really see that because that footage didn't get aired, but, there were bodies all over the place of people that jumped out of the towers. He talked about being in, I think it was Berlin, I think that Brock was at this past year, where there were 200,000 people. He says, do you have any idea what 200,000 people look like? I mean, that's just a mob of people. He talked about being involved in one of the interviews that Obama did in the Mideast, and said that they were doing this live, and at the end of the interview, oil prices fell $5 a barrel within 1 hour. He goes, that's scary. Look, how much power is that? And it's
what did he tell you? What he thought of Obama's, without getting political, with his eloquence?
No.
He never mentioned his eloquence.
I never heard that from anyone. These gentlemen, we never got into talks about politics at all. I mean, they're doing it like you should do as a news journalist. I'm sure they have their own political opinions and so forth, and talk about that, but they were just talking about the job in delivering the news and giving the best quality and doing it as fast as they possibly can. And never got into that even one time.
Did he tell you about any dangerous places he was at, for example, Somalia and some of those?
He was in Iraq, and he said that they got into he was right at the front line, and they got into an unbelievable firefight. He said a lot of soldiers got killed. He got separated from his reporter and actually his big camera, and he was up underneath a bridge, and he had a small little camcorder like most folks would use, and he did his own report just behind the camera, and he's filming what's going on. And he said he ended up winning an Emmy for that report. Now, he said, we have millions of dollars worth of equipment, and he says, I won an Emmy with this $500 camera, but he said that shows you it's all about the story.
Yes.
And he said he didn't know that if he was going to make it out or not. He said they really got caught, and there were a lot of casualties, and he wasn't sure if he was going to get out of that one or not, but he kept filming, and he told the story, even if it's only on a small little camera.
Real journalist.
A real journalist.
Quite a few of those fellows have been fatalities, haven't they, in Iraq?
Correct. Absolutely.
And the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the other things, some of the other places of danger he's been, in harm's way?
That I can't... I can't think of, he told me just a lot of the neat places. In fact, he was leaving from here, he was headed to Cuba. They were doing a story over there in Cuba. I don't even know what the story was about, but he said he's on the road like 240 days a year. And so he's gone all the time.
What an interesting life the guy leads.
Absolutely. What he has seen over the past 30 years, and such an accomplished photographer. It was a real treat, and to pick his brain a little bit, and like you said, we talk about some equipment and so forth. But that was my week. Brian Williams and the photographer, that made it for me.
The funniest thing that happened in this whole thing, or oddest thing? I kind of catch you unawares.
Yeah, I don't think anything funny. For me, overwhelming. Just
yeah.
Where it was so big. You go down to the stadium, and half of the stadium was filled with stages and the sound systems and lights and cameras and the organization, and it all happened within 3 or 4 days. It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
The amazing part is how that whole thing can be pulled together. Of course, these guys have got a lot of experience.
Correct.
They're just going maybe 2 or 3 times a day, don't they?
Well, right, and they have other teams that are out in different cities. And like you said, when they leave here, they're going to have another big rally in Cincinnati. Then that afternoon, they'll be somewhere else, and then the next day. So they have these different teams in different cities, pulling this all together. It's absolutely amazing.
Chuck, it's been great talking to you again. I really enjoy it, and I wish we could talk for another 2 hours and listen to what you've got to say. And folks, thank you for being with us. And once again, from the Lion's Den here at... I think Chuck is going to get after me for saying that.
I'm embarrassed on that.
Because when you're always on the spot when you're on TV.
Yeah.
So and thanks again, folks, for being with us.
This has been the Ernie Stadbeck Show with your host, Ernie Stadbeck. To get in touch with Ernie, write to Ernie Stadbeck, 378 South Van Buren Avenue, Barberton, Ohio, 44203-4014. By phone at 330-644-7724 or online at erniestad@aol.com.